and such a warm welcome. Now I would like to introduce the chair for the conference, Dr. C.N. Narayana, Senior Professor and Chief Mentor, S.B.PATIL. Sir has more than 3 decades of experience in industry and academia. He is a transformational HR and strategy professor, having great command on subjects like change management and organizational development. Sir is an institution builder and mentor. He is called as a Midas Touch Director in B Schools. So let's have Dr. C.N. Narayana to give away the address. Over to you, C.N. Narayana, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Pranita, for the introduction. I'll start this thread from where Dr. Kirti Dharwadkar left. That's about the economic growth. So today the conference is very, very relevant in terms of topic and how we are going to connect with people in the subject of not only innovation, but the management practices. So if you talk about the developed countries, so-called developed countries like US and UK and some of the European countries, Germany, they have all focused on a parallel connect between the management practice and the innovation happening all the time. That makes a huge difference when you talk about the management practice. It's not about talking a theory of innovation. So I'll say that economic growth in developing countries require application of appropriate technology and effective management practices. It is not either or, but both. In the moments of crisis, companies quickly shift their attention to survival when the businesses are scrambling to cope with the economic need, employee safety. So it is a misguided focus on sustainability. So when you are talking about sustainability, when you talk about innovation, it has to be sustainable in the long run. And when you talk about the practice, it is to be called as a practice and it is to be sustainable as well. So innovation has to be a culture of sustainability, be it an organization, educational institution, or even for that matter, a country. Organizations like Xerox, GE, and Indian companies like Tata, Infosys, and Serum Institute of India always focus on innovative culture to take any rude shock. I still remember working in Xerox, most of the ideas of innovation came from the employees. That means they had a freedom of giving ideas. We had something called Eureka, where any employee can contribute an idea, and if it's going to be successfully implemented, they will be rewarded. That's how those organizations work. And then we should also look at some examples of those organizations where they were successful in innovation and invention as well. When you talk about management practices, it has to be connected with sustainability to call it a practice. When it stands a longer period of practice, it becomes a benchmark practice, which is needless to say, sustainable in the long run. But that does not mean that we would depend on the past laurels, but keep improving every single day to make it an innovative practice, which is necessarily meaning that we need to take into account of interest of all the stakeholders before we implement an idea, wherever it crops from. Out of the innovative approach, what we are talking about to sustain, I'll take an example of one of those tragedies which happened in India in the early 80s, 84, 85, when Union Carbide, the catastrophe happened in Bhopal, where more than 5 lakh people got affected due to gas leak, and nearly 5,000 people plus lost lives, and many people, lakhs and lakhs of people are still suffering. If they have had a due diligence process of consulting the local people, and then the residents regulatory authorities have given proper sanction for these things, this could have been avoided. So this is a very good example when you talk about innovation and the practices what we do in the industry as well as in institution. So management practices could be in any area, as pointed out by Dr. Kirti. It could be in HR, operation, marketing, or even in education as a service, or even agriculture for that matter, to increase the effectiveness and efficiency. Sustainable could be from the point of environment to long-term effectiveness and also efficiencies. It includes the best of value for money and the easiest way of doing things. I'll put it in a very, very simple language. It gives an insight into the relationship between the environment and the best use of technology tools, making this world an easily manageable place. So if we talk about organization, it is called the pioneering innovative mode. Organization refer this as a PI. The primary generators are more of a strong internal variable. So when you talk about internal variables, we have to connect that with environmental variables. That's what makes an innovation successful. Environment may be that it may necessitate some PIs for the firms or organization to differentiate in the marketplace. So it could be used as a differentiation tool. But definitely, when you talk about innovation, we should have a sustainability in mind, and it should be with all the stakeholders. And it could be even opportunities diversification, some of the companies which are doing in pandemic period, or organization to differentiate in the marketplace. And when you talk about innovation, it has to be a continuous improvement. I can't say today I've innovated a product or service, I'm going to sit on it. No, it has to be, as I told in the beginning, it has to be an everyday affair, and you have to be a culture to make it happen and sustainable. So some of the innovation practices in healthcare management in the recent year is a very good example. The PPEs and the companies which are coming up in during disaster management processes, how to reduce infections in the long run to various management practices, including social distancing, use of technology, and remote operations. All these things or touch-free devices, I can say. Lots of things we are learning during pandemic. But should we learn only through a pandemic? No. As I said, it has to be an everyday process of improvement, and also in terms of innovation happening day-to-day life. And if I specifically talk about education sector, the management practices in academics, it could be pedagogy, technology, newer medium of mode of instructions, and the newer tools which we are going to use in the to making learning and absorption easy for students. Education as an industry has to change not only in the message but also in the medium, including technology, good creative content. This is also an example of innovation management practices which is happening in this sector. So if I have to summarize this innovation, for a layman's understanding, I can call it as a 7 P's of innovation. The first P being the planning, and the second P being the pipeline, and the third P is process, then people, platform, product or service, and performance. So what is then innovation management? Management innovation is nothing but the practices we are referring to. The learning model for a technology innovation management is contextual. Number one, it has to be contextual, and it has to be work-based learning. It could be integrated learning. It could be problem-based learning. It could be cooperative learning. It could be even experiential learning. And last but not the least is a blended learning methods. So since we are an educational institution, I want to put this thing across very clearly. What are the drivers if you're talking about innovation in education specifically? And these are the drivers. And what are the structure we are talking about? The structure could be, it can have various phases. So if I talk about overall scenario, the outer lines, inner lines, if it is a circle, then I can define structural, in terms of contextual, and the management practices include knowledge management, your global network, your regulatory, your multimedia, your outer circle includes all these things, even regulation. And innovation management practices for internal thing, it includes knowledge management, strategic human outcomes, educational learning outcomes in case of education. So if you talk about the cycle, outer and inner cycle, how it is moving, it is hand in hand. So the research practices and innovation performance, which must result in successful business outcomes or educational objectives or outcomes we normally refer to. So it starts from the idea of funnel. So innovation has got a funnel. So you got various ideas we just put there, and then whatever filters out to be the best 3 or 4, we select and see whether that is a workable idea. That is how all the successful organizations, which I was referring to, Xerox, GE, have done the innovation as a culture. And this is called a cycle of management of innovation cycle. And it comes through a culture of innovation. So that's going to be the rider when I talk about the foundation of innovation cycle management. And finally, the innovation as a product or a service is the end one, which we are going to end up with. If this product works effectively with sustainability as a goal, any management practice through innovation must address a fair world, economically growth oriented world, and we must achieve resilience of management practices, which can be followed by research paper presentation on various things which we are talking about e-conference. It could be discussed anywhere, but ensure that all the stakeholders are involved in this sustainability stuff. Otherwise, innovation will become a useless thing internally. It has to be useful to the society, to the country, and all the stakeholders. Then only you will see innovation as really becoming practice. So when you talk about a practice of a management school, B schools definitely look at benchmark practices, and the organizations, the institutions which are focused on innovation would grow, and even the consolidation of the B schools will happen in the years to come, basically based on these parameters. So it is a very, very relevant topic for today. And these practices should be sustainable in management practices. And you have a erudite panel members and the keynote speakers for this 2-day e-conference, which is followed by research paper presentation on tracks. I'm sure these 2 days of interactions will throw light to give some insights into both innovation and sustainable management practices. I want to thank the organizers and the guiding people over here who have been, you're not there in this screen, but definitely the people who work there, including Pranita, Pranita, Dr. Anish Kumar Karya, Dr. Aishwarya, and all those people. I want to thank the director, Dr. Kirti Darwakar, for giving me the opportunity to come as a mentor and speak a few words on this topic. I also want to thank Dr. Parag Kalkar, SPPU, and also Dr. Apurva, who is also there in today's proceedings. And you have a lot of luminaries like Mr. Kati and Mr. Himanshu, who have agreed to come and spend a valuable time as keynote speakers. Last but not the least, I want to thank Dr. Bhushan Pardesi, Dr. Padmalochana Bishoy, and the entire team of S.B.PATIL. And we are hopeful that this conference will give a lot of insights, and also want to wish all the very best for the 2-day conference. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.